Welcome to the Church Solutions Podcast, brought to you by JSL Solutions. The Church Solutions Podcast is designed to help equip you and your church in the use of technology and other tools and services. And now, here are your hosts, Steve Lacy and Phil Thompson.
And welcome again to another edition of the Church Solutions Podcast.
Hi, my name is Steve Lacy.
And my name is Phil Thompson. We are actually doing this podcast remotely today, so that's why there may be a little bit of a difference in our microphone. But Steve is with us in another office, and I am in my office.
Yes.
All right. Well, it's good to be here with you all. Thanks for being here. How are you, Steve?
I'm doing good. We're saving some travel time.
We are. That's right. We're different parts of the city here, so that helps. Save some gas, save some tire wear. But anyhow, let's move on and let people know what we're actually talking about today in our podcast.
Yes, so we're going to discuss 10 signs that you're not, or that you're the boss, but not the leader.
10 signs that you're the boss, but not the leader. Now, this is from our good friend Tony Morgan. And if you want to catch up with Tony Morgan, just go to TonyMorganLive.com. And Tony is really now a church consultant. He has had a lot of experience as an executive pastor and has worked for different churches and has been doing consulting now for many years. I've met Tony and actually gone to one of his deals many years ago in Kansas City. And one of these days we will chase him down and force him to come on here and do it. But he's a busy guy. But this is all about, I guess you might call, toxic leadership or having a toxic culture in your church. And so there's two things that I want to bring out here before we start. One is, this is kind of directed to the pastors, and we have pastors that listen, executive pastors and volunteers and all that. So this is kind of directed to the pastor listening today. However, it could also be something that you could, if you're not the pastor, but maybe you work for somebody, that there may be some warning signs here as we go through this list. It's something to kind of keep an eye on and beware of. Did that make sense how I explained that, Steve?
Yeah, and this is true definitely in the church. And, I come from a large corporate infrastructure world, and this applies there as well. Yeah, it's probably where it rings true with me that a lot of the exposure I've had to bosses that really weren't leaders.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate because there's ways you could grow, and there are ways you can grow in this even as we go through this list. And I'll just say this, I've said this a few times, and I'm really proud of it. I have been serving churches now since 1978, and that's a long time, and most of my experience has been good. I mean, probably 90% of my experience working with churches, either as a senior pastor, or executive pastor, or in some other capacity, it's been good. But I have run across a lot of this from time to time, depending on the groups I've been with. And some of these things I may have even done myself. And so
because you've been the boss, the leader.
Well, I have as a senior pastor for about 8 years, but I've worked with some signs here, and just because some of these signs that we're going to talk about here, somebody may have one or two of these signs, doesn't mean it's hopeless or that this guy is terrible or this gal is terrible. Not saying that. There's opportunities here to change, I guess, and to be better. So it's all about leadership, and as we work with churches, and we generally talk about technology with churches because that's what we do with streaming video, but we have a heart for churches. We really want churches to grow and to be healthy. So that's why we're talking about this topic today.
All right. I reminisce back to who's our leadership guy? John
Maxwell?
John Maxwell, yeah.
Good guy.
And written quite a bit on leadership. So this will ring true with him too, I think.
I'm sure it is, and there's lots of good leaders. So, all right, so let's just jump into it. So again, your church might be growing. And again, if you're a leader listening to this, your church might be growing, your ministry might be doing really well, but maybe something might not be right. Maybe your team isn't healthy. And many times the team is not healthy because the leader is not healthy. And so, again, setting the context of this, many churches have the pastor at the top of the organizational structure. Now, not all churches do, but many do. And he's the guy or she's the guy in charge. But it takes more than positional authority to effectively lead others and create a healthy team environment. And that's what we're talking about today. So,
all right. So we got 10 signs.
We got 10.
10 of them that you may be the boss, but not the leader. So what's number one on our list?
So number one on our list is you, the leader, make every decision. You make every decision. And that's not really healthy.
All right. So there's, and this kind of ties into micromanaging, right?
Yes.
That no one feels authorized or empowered to make their own decisions at whatever level. Everything comes back to the boss.
Yeah. And look, this isn't healthy. I mean, even if this is the only thing on the list that the person has a problem with, after, when we go through all these things, that's still not an excuse. It's not a healthy thing, because if you're making every decision, or if you're out there listening and your pastor makes every decision, it's not a good thing for several reasons. One is, as you just said, Steve, you're not empowering the rest of your leadership team. You're not empowering people. But also, it's just unhealthy for the leader, because it creates more stress. It creates this idea that everything's on my shoulders. I got to do this. I got to make this. And so it's just it's a red flag.
Plus, it moves the decision away from the, how do I put this, kind of, the area of knowledge and interaction. Mm-hmm. Somebody that knows the situation best should be making the decision, and sometimes it's just not a healthy thing if it's every low-level decision is coming up from up on high.
Yeah. And it's always good to get a different input. And maybe you're the one that the buck stops with you, but still you need to get feedback. And I think we kind of talked a little bit about that later on the list here. So you have to make every decision. Not a very good thing. That's a sign that you may be creating a toxic culture in your church.
All right. So number 2 on our list.
Number 2.
You know people fear you, and you're okay with that.
I've worked with people like this. They have this thing where people just fear their leadership. They fear them. And, that, again, there's not much that should be said about this. It should be pretty obvious. That is not healthy. I mean, especially if you know that, if you're the leader and people are just intimidated by you and you're fine with that, that's not good. That is not a healthy thing at all, because that is not the way ministry should work. It's not the way leadership should work.
Right, exactly. I can see, one personality type may be a very volatile leader that everyone's walking around in eggshells and say, I better not upset this guy, because if he goes ballistic, I'm gonna be in the line of fire.
Yep, and I worked with a guy like this for a short period of time. And I didn't realize it till a little bit later, but he just really was like that. And sure enough, eventually it came back to bite him. And he's out of ministry today. And it wasn't just this issue, but it was multiple issues. But he's out of ministry today. And he harmed a lot of people and hurt a lot of people. And it was not a good scene. So, people fear you. And if you're okay with that, then something is wrong. Bluntly said.
All right. So number 3 on our list, you have an agenda for today, but you lack a vision for the future.
Yeah, I think, you can address this a little bit too, Steve, but I think, you've got to be, a good leader has vision and is able to communicate that vision with other people that he works with, and obviously with the congregation. If you're a pastor, it's one thing to just go day to day. But, to really see what's ahead and be able to kind of get an idea and paint a picture for the vision. Not that it can never change, it can, but if you lack vision, you're not, it's more of a toxic culture.
Right. And I can see where just roles within the church, senior pastor versus executive pastor. I can see the executive pastor really focused on the agenda for today and getting stuff done, but the senior pastor needs to have that vision of the future and make sure everyone's rowing in the right direction.
Yep, I think that's a healthy way to look at it. I think that's a good thing. And even if you're a small church, there's got to be some people, I would think, that have some more detail-oriented that could work with you for daily stuff that has to happen at the church, and you can get the big picture.
All right, number 4, you lead a team, but your life is isolated from other people.
Yeah, I've seen this as well. And this all comes down, in my opinion, to relationships. If you feel like you're leading a team, but you have no relationships with people to speak of, people that you get together with on occasion, on a regular basis, to me, again, it's just an unhealthy thing. Leading a team is more than just telling people what to do. It involves relationships and having coffee together and friendships. I have a friend who used to say, we are friends first, leaders second. And he would say that to his leadership team. And I think I really think it's a good way to look at it.
So I worked with a bunch of different people throughout my career in the corporate world as well. And different bosses treated this one differently. Yes. So some would say, I'm the boss and we can small talk and that sort of thing, but I'm not going to go to lunch with you or hang out with you or anything like that. They wouldn't go hang out with anybody. They would take their lunch at their desk or in their office, and so anyway, I guess there's pluses and minuses to avoid, but what you talk about is you got to have a solid relationship with your team, whether that involves what you're socially or not. You got to have a good professional relationship.
I think you can have boundaries, and I think you're referring to probably more of a secular thing, and I'm not saying you shouldn't have boundaries in the church realm, in the ministry realm. There's probably boundaries that you need to have with your team. Depending on the level of relationship there. But I think if you're constantly isolated, I think the key word here in this is isolation. If you're just isolated from people, it's not a good thing.
Right. So next on our list.
Number 5, you think once you get the title, you have the influence. So again, this is a title chaser person, a person that likes titles. I remember when I first got ordained in ministry, I was like really proud of that title, and that was one of the things I wanted. I wanted to be an ordained minister, an ordained pastor. And once I was, it's like, oh, okay, not that big of a deal, is it? But, I was really young and dumb back then. But I think, lots of people are into titles. And I'm not. And I think titles need to be respected. I think titles are can be good in a sense where they help identify maybe who you are or what you do. I should say maybe not who you are, but what you do. But titles in the long run, I think the influence factor is very limited by just a title.
Yeah. So, this kind of ties into the whole message of this thing, of positional leadership versus actual leadership. So so just because you have that title doesn't mean that people respect you and follow your lead.
You have to earn that. I believe you have to really earn that, and I think you do that, which I think dovetails into the 6th point here in our list of top 10 signs you may be the boss but not the leader. And number 6, unless you have something more to say here.
No, go for it.
Number 6 is you believe the volume of your words is louder than the impact of your behaviors. And so, again, it's all about, how you live and how you lead and how you interact with people and how authentic you are with people. And so you can talk all day and order people around and do all these things, but if your behavior doesn't match it, I guess there's a word for this, right? Called hypocrite. It's going to be a negative impact on people that are in your ministry.
Yep, I can definitely agree with that.
So
people watch and learn much more than they listen and learn. So
yeah, it's that old cliche: don't do what I say, or what is it? Don't do as I do as I say.
Yeah.
Well,
that doesn't work.
That doesn't work. You can try it, but it's not going to work. So again, we're talking about, all these things, if they add up, and even a few of them, you're talking about a toxic culture here. And while things may be looking good, doesn't mean that everything is healthy.
All right. So number 7 on our list.
Number 7
is you blame others for mistakes and take credit for the wins.
I always tease my leadership team. I do a little part-time stuff with the church, and I always kind of make a joke about this. That didn't work. That must have been Kevin's idea. But it's true. I mean, look, if you're a team, you got to take the responsibility along with everybody else. You know what I mean? And if something's not flying or something doesn't work, all right, didn't work. It's not necessarily one person's fault. It could be a lot of things. And, if something's working, then great. It's a team effort, right? We're talking teams here. And so it's not just, hey, how great I am and how good I did, but it's taking credit for wins as well as taking credit for some of the losses that do happen.
Right. So, just a sign of a good leader. If you do have problems, it ultimately goes back to the leader, and the leader should, take the credit for the problem. Yeah. And if you do win, you praise the team.
Yeah, absolutely. It's how it should work in life, and I think you see that in Scripture, and you see that with successful churches and churches that are healthy churches, healthy ministries practice, these positive things.
All right. So number 8, you don't ask your subordinates or peers for input or advice.
Yeah, that kind of gets back to, I'm just going to make every decision here, and, I'm just going to do it. And it's to me disrespectful, and it's thinking that you got it all together and nobody else can do this except you. And so getting input or getting some feedback from people you either, work with, or people that may not be, maybe you're a senior pastor, but, there's people that may not be in that position that have some good ideas or have some input that you and your church could benefit from.
All right, exactly. Plus, they're going to be closer to the action of what's going on day to day, so they're going to they should have some good input and advice.
Yeah, it's impossible, I think, to see everything, and we have, we get short-sighted and we get caught up in different things. And so sometimes you don't see the big picture. If you're the leader, you don't always see everything. And so when you have people around you, it's good to get their thoughts, their input, their ideas on some things, because they might see something you don't see. And again, it's and even with peers, even people working, in different ministries that, work on the same maybe position you have, but are in different church or different ministry. It's always good to get different input, because it helps everybody.
All right. So number 9 on our top 10 signs that you may be the boss, but not a leader.
Mm-hmm. You are focused solely on the mission and not the people who are on the mission with you. And this is a very common mistake that people make. I've made this before, and I've made probably several of these, but you get caught up in this. Here's what we got to do. We got to make this happen. We got to, do this. We got to go forward here. And it's so easy to be really driven, especially if you're a driven person, which many leaders are. That's why they're leaders. But you get focused on the task, or as in case, the mission, and there are people who are involved, but you don't see them. All you see is the goal.
Exactly. All right. So rounding out our list here.
Yeah. Number 10.
And this brings back some John Maxwell quotes. But number 10, you are the boss, but no one is following you. Yep.
You're the boss, but it's his one of his quotes that he's famous for. I don't know if he's attributed to it, I think, but that is, if you think you're a leader, how's it go? If you Go ahead. You know better than I do.
I'm going to butcher it as well, but it's something along the lines. You think you're a leader and you turn around and no one's following you, then you're just going for a walk.
Yep. I think that's close enough. But yeah, I mean, again, are people really following you? So if you're the senior pastor and, they may be following you from a way, way back, but are they really following you? Do they really, respect you? Do they really, get what you're trying to do? And are they, are you leading from a position of benevolence? Are you a benevolent leader? Or are you kind of a tyrant, which we were talking about earlier? That's really the big picture. And sometimes that's hard to figure out. If you're in the position where you are as a leader and you're caught up in some of this stuff we've been talking about, a lot of times you just don't, it's hard to realize if that's the case. But
I think it's probably fairly common where, your leader, your boss, the boss is not really the leader, but there is somebody in the organization that has a following.
Yep.
And depending on how the leader reacts to that person will determine, a lot of times the leader will say, well, that's very threatening to me because I've got this, junior person over here that's got all the great ideas and is, everyone's kind of following behind them. And, a mature leader would say, we need to, make sure this guy's got not only the leadership, but he's got the authority and he's got the position to match. Or a unhealthy would say, how do I shut that down so they start listening to me?
Yeah. Yep. And I've seen that. I've certainly seen that happen. I'm sure you have as well. So, look, we should accomplish, the mission, the great mission, but our focus really needs to be on the people who are, on that same mission with us. When those relationships are healthy, our influence increases, it grows, and it will grow in other areas as well, and other people will have more influence, and you'll see your church grow and continue to be really healthy. So I think these are good things. There's something to look at. If you're in the position where you're a leader and some of these things may speak to you, I'd encourage you to jump on them a little bit and see how you can correct those areas. And I'm sure there's probably people listening that they're maybe not a senior pastor, but they see some of these things in their senior pastor. What do you do? That's a really difficult question because you want to see that person, if you care and love your pastor, but they have some of these toxic influences here, that can certainly be a challenge. And I don't have an answer.
No, I'm not.
The solution is, you hate to say, hey, if you're following somebody like this and they've got all these things you shouldn't be and you should leave the church. I'm not going to say that. But I also know that it's not a good thing, and sometimes that has to happen before the leader wakes up and realizes, hey, there's something wrong here. I don't know. So,
all right.
Unless you have some advice, I'm not going to say anything.
No, I have no. It's a tough situation. So, yeah.
It is tough.
Just leave it at that.
Yeah, it could be unhealthy. So those are something you'll have to make if you're listening there. So anyhow, that's it. We are done for today with our Church Solutions podcast. Look, if you want to add to this list or if you feel like we're off base on some of this stuff, just send us an email. You can always contact us by sending us an email, support@streamingchurch.tv. That's one of our domains. That's one of the things we and streaming video, streamingchurch.tv, and myflock.com is website templates and stuff. So we've got lots of things going on. If we can help your church in any way, we would be very happy to do that.
All right. Sounds great.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Steve Lacy on the other end here. I'm Phil Thompson. Again, thanks for listening to the Church Solutions podcast. We will catch you again next time. Have yourself a great day.